One of the first things that you need to know about before moving here is whether or not Atlanta is racially diverse. So many people ask about this. Is there enough racial diversity in Metro Atlanta? And the answer is yes, absolutely. Gone are the days of Atlanta being like the kind of super southern city that was all like one race or one ethnicity. Atlanta is one of the best places in the country for finding racial diversity. As a Latin American person myself, it's certainly something that is super important to me and my family. Atlanta has really become a melting pot with its international airport and its international feel and vibe. There are so many people from all over the world and the country who have moved here to Atlanta. And so this is certainly a place where you're going to be able to find many different cultures and many different kinds of people and ideas. And I'm certainly so thankful for the amount of diversity that we have here. It's something that is a priority for my wife and I, and it's also something that's a priority that I want my kids to be able to experience. So this is a great place for finding racial diversity, whether it's in the city of Atlanta, even in the suburbs of Atlanta. You can find plenty of different diverse ethnicities and cultures. The next thing you need to know about if you're planning on moving to Atlanta is basements. A lot of you guys are asking me about whether or not the homes in Atlanta have basements. Hey, and also if you're thinking about moving here, feel free, call me, text me anytime. Any questions that you have, whether it's about basements or moving to Atlanta or anything about making the move to this city, you can call or text anytime. Thank you so much to everybody who has reached out. I am always happy to help. I'm always by my phone. I'm the one who answers those phone calls, those text messages, those emails. Thank you so much to everybody. But when it comes to basements, I would say it's about a third to half of the homes here in Atlanta have basements. Now, it's definitely not every home. While it might be that way in other parts of the country, we don't have basements in all of the homes. If it's not on a basement, the home here either is on a slab or it's on a crawl space. A crawl space, I'm not sure if this is common in other parts of the country, but a crawl space is like a short basement. Imagine something that's like 3 feet tall, and it's not living space. It's like just the dirt is at the bottom. The ground is just dirt. And then on top, you can see like the underside of the flooring. And then you can see the cement structure on the very outside perimeter of the home. So it's kind of like the stilts for the home. So the house is on this crawl space. And it allows ventilation to go underneath the home. It allows water because we have a lot of water here in Georgia. So that's certainly a big one that you need to realize. Like there's a lot of humidity here. There's a lot of rainfall here. 55 inches per year of rainfall in Metro Atlanta. For comparison's sake, Seattle only gets like 30 inches of rain. So the amount of water that we have here is significant. And these crawl spaces allow for the water. It's not preferable, but the water can go underneath the home instead of into the home. So this is super beneficial to have crawl spaces. But when it comes to basements, you need to realize that we also have a lot of elevation change here in Metro Atlanta. So it's super common for some part of the basement to be below ground and the other part of the basement to not be below ground. Because again, if it's on a slope, you kind of have half and half. So some part of the basement is underground and needs to be built to be underground, and the other half of the basement has like some kind of exterior access. And what we see very often here in Metro Atlanta is that basements need to be treated differently than you treat spaces that are built above ground. It is super important to have an HVAC system that is pulling the air out of the basement if you have a subterranean basement here in Metro Atlanta, or a dehumidifier. Something that's taking the moisture out of the air is super important in Metro Atlanta in the basement. And when you're home shopping, that's certainly something that you need to look for. It's something that I always look for with my clients, making sure that there's something to take care of that. And so Definitely some things to think about when it comes to basements here in Metro Atlanta.
They said she won't work the way that I want. It don't matter cause I want you the most. And if I can't be close to you.
This next thing that you need to know about when you're moving to Atlanta is that we are slowly heading into a buyer's market. I don't think everybody is quite on the same page yet, but my opinion is that we are starting to see more sellers and less buyers. This means that if you are a buyer in Metro Atlanta, you could start to see that you have the advantage over the sellers. In the past 5, 10, 15 years, it has always been that there are a lot less sellers. So the sellers have always kind of had the advantage. They could ask for a lot of the terms that they prefer, and the buyers would very often have to give in to those terms because there were so many other buyers trying to buy that house. But we're starting to see less buyers, especially as interest rates are increasing and the closing costs are increasing. So this could mean that we start to see where buyers have the advantage and could start naming their terms instead of the seller. The buyers being able to close when they want to. Maybe the sellers start paying for the closing costs. Maybe the seller starts paying for the inspection instead of the buyer. So this all looks great for buyers, and I really think that we're starting to head in that direction, especially in like the fall and winter of this year, 2024. I think we could really start getting back into a buyer's market and buyers being able to dictate a lot more different factors on the purchase agreement. Another thing you should know about before you move here is that property taxes are continuing to go up, and we don't have a law here in Georgia like I think there is in California or maybe other places in the country where property taxes can only go up by a certain amount per year. We don't have that kind of law. So if it goes up by 5%, it just goes up by 5%. Nothing is there to prevent that drastic increase in property taxes. And as property values are going up, we're seeing a lot of people's taxes continue to go up. In fact, I recently disputed my property tax bill using this company called Ownwell, and I'll put their description below, or if you want to know more about them, leave a comment and I'll put the explanation or the contact information for Ownwell. And I don't have any kind of affiliation with Ownwell. They don't even know who I am. I just used them recently to dispute my property taxes, and it went great. They lowered my property tax bill. They took a small percentage of that savings, and I in turn saved like $300, $400 for the year for my property taxes. So this has been a great resource for helping out with that increase in property taxes. Another thing that you need to know about before moving here is that not only are home values increasing, but the best deals on homes can be found on the outskirts of Metro Atlanta. The closer you are to Atlanta, generally speaking, the more you're going to pay for a home. But when you get farther out into suburbs like Canton or Woodstock, maybe Cumming, Georgia, maybe Beaufort or Gainesville, those kinds of areas are where you can get a lot more home for your money. In fact, one of my favorites is Powder Springs, Georgia, and Dallas, Georgia. There are some great new construction homes there, 4 bedrooms, 3 bath, 2,000, 2,500 square feet for like 400,000. I mean, it's an absolute steal. To find that a 4 bedroom, 3 bath, 2,500 square foot home closer to Atlanta in cities like Marietta or Sandy Springs, Alpharetta, you're looking at more like 700,000 or 800,000. So the best deals can be found on the outskirts of Metro Atlanta. That's where home prices are still affordable and you can get a lot more home for your money.
They said she won't work the way that I want. It don't matter cause I want you the most. And if I can't be close to you.
One question that we often get from a lot of people is, if I live in one of the suburbs like Marietta, will I need to go to Atlanta for anything? Or will I need to travel to a different suburb for things? And the answer is no. Generally, these suburbs like Alpharetta, Marietta, Suwanee, Dallas, Woodstock, they all kind of have everything that you need. Of course, if your employer is somewhere else, you would need to drive somewhere else for that. When it comes to things like a doctor's office or the school or grocery stores or things to do, all of these cities kind of have everything that you would need. You don't tend to have to go too far out to another suburb for those things. And then a big one that you absolutely need to know about before you move to Atlanta is who pays for the closing costs when you buy a home. Right now, we're looking at most of the time buyers are paying for their own closing costs. And how much closing costs are when you're purchasing a home depends on your specific lender. So before you make an offer on a home, you need to have a pre-approval from a lender showing the seller that you can afford the home. And when you get that pre-approval from your lender, they should also include kind of an estimate sheet that will include the closing costs of the loan. If you get a pre-approval from a lender and it does not have closing costs on it, you need to ask your lender to provide that, because how much you're going to pay in closing costs has a big factor in how much you offer on a home. If you don't know how much you're going to pay, how are you going to know how much to offer to purchase the home? So I see lenders doing this all the time, and very often they don't include that closing cost sheet because they want to try to hook you and get your business, but it is very difficult to make offers without it. So make sure that you ask your lender for that closing costs sheet when you get your pre-approval. In fact, if you want to know more about the entire home buying process, not just the making the offer process and the closing costs, but more about like the inspection and the appraisal and the whole contract period, I actually made an entire video about just that. You can check it out right here. I'll see you in the next video.